Well, hello everyone. This is the second recording of a video interview with Brendan Maher, who's here with me today again. And he's a psychologist, clinical psychologist from Geelong. He runs a practice called Mind Healthcare, 15 psychologists and one psychiatrist working with him. He's been running that practice now for 15 years. And he's been the APS National Chair of the Clinical College in what you could call the dark years, 2019 to 2021, the hard times. But he and his colleague, Tamara Kavanagh, have written a new book which will be published in 2024 called The Tech-Savvy Psychologist. So it's a great pleasure to have Brendan with us today. And welcome, Brendan.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So let's talk about where psychology and psychologists are up to in terms of digital technology. What's your take on our state of the nation here?
Yep, I think we're improving, definitely, but it does vary from practice to practice and even from psychologist to psychologist within individual practices. And then again, it also varies in terms of what individual psychologists are utilizing. And I think that's kind of reflective of just how diverse the opportunities are for psychologists in private practice to utilize digital technology. Obviously, what we tried to cover in the book was highlighting those opportunities related to digital technology, but we also tried to look at the implementation and really embedding those digital technologies into our private practice, because I think there can be a tendency with digital technology to identify things or to try them for a short amount of time without really embedding them. So we just kind of move on to the next thing. And I think potentially ChatGPT could be an example of that for some psychologists, being aware of ChatGPT, and in theory, it could be something that's good for us as psychologists. The challenge, though, is to really embed that into our practice.
Yes, and I think the tendency we we tend to have is this tendency to take on something, give it a go. This is just humans, not just psychologists. And then something comes up and you go, oh, that didn't work. And we sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. And I can think of some of the examples around of, ways of taking notes. So there's a app called Patient Notes AI, which was devised by a Australian physio. Very nice app, very interesting. But the process of actually recording what you're doing with a client and then transferring it into I think it's a ChatGPT kind of backup there that analyzes the text, creates it, puts it into a template, and then you have to put it across to your practice management system. A lot of people would look at that and go, I could just as quickly write it straight into Galaxy, thanks.
Yes.
So I think there's this issue of perhaps us going, oh, that sounds great. And then as soon as we see a few things that we go, oh, I'm not sure about that, or that sounds a bit time consuming, or I gave it a go and then,
And I think that's the short term versus the longer term. In the short term, sometimes it can be quicker to use the traditional method, but it's trying to think about what would this be like in the longer term. And that's one of the challenges that we set for the readers in the book around ChatGPT, is to utilize it every day for a month at work. So you come into work, you open up your practice management software, you open up your email because they're embedded in our practice for the vast majority of us. It's also opening up ChatGPT and thinking about how I might be able to utilize this either to solve my problems or to create greater efficiency on a daily basis in order to really embed it into our practice. That'll be the challenge for psychologists over the next little while in terms of utilizing ChatGPT or artificial intelligence as well as possible.
So thanks for the homework. We're always so good at giving homework. We don't always follow it up. But anyway, that's another story. So what is the most important thing for psychologists and psychology practices to be thinking about right now? And I love your example there, even though I made a bit of fun of it over the homework. But how should we start to think about AI? And I was just wondering whether we might bring up your model, which I love, because I think it gives people a way of thinking about um,
Yeah, so what we did here is
the
that
whole system. Yep.
so digital technology being so broad, what we tried to do is to break it up into 6 different areas that psychologists might think about when it comes to digital technology. So assessment, psychoeducation, treatment, outcome measures, marketing and networking, and digitalization, and looking to take a little bit from each of these in terms of becoming an all-rounder, if you like, as a psychologist who is good at digital technology. If I was pressed to identify just one of these that's the most important for psychologists, particularly if they're in the relatively early stages of embracing digital technology, is to look at digitalization within your practice. How many of your processes are still paper-based, and trying to get them over to digital as much as possible. Now, that's not about the idea of trying to remove paper. What the idea is about trying to take advantage of what digital has to offer. Many of us moved from a paper-based diary to an electronic diary because of the whole range of different opportunities that were associated with having an electronic diary, being able to access your diary remotely so you can see what appointments you've got for tomorrow, but then also being able to do payments quickly, to be able to do Medicare rebates, as opposed to literally, and I'm old enough that I can still remember us doing this, filling out pieces of paper and posting them to Medicare. And if they don't get rejected, then it'll all be sorted in 3 to 4 weeks.
It now sounds draconian, doesn't it? Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't.
So it's taking advantages of those opportunities. And the latest one that a lot of psychology practices are going towards is having an automated intake process, recognizing how much more efficient that makes us as a practice to have an intake process which is digitalized. But it's also an opportunity to create a smooth process for the client that you're onboarding into your business. So that's an area that I think would be a good idea for psychology practices to focus on, is trying to get things as digital as possible. The other reason looking forward for me saying that is that it's going to be much easier to take advantage of AI opportunities if your practice is digital, if you can let that AI loose on digital data, which if you're still paper-based is going to be difficult to do.
And so there are some products or services that we should be thinking about utilizing beyond, as you say, the digitalization of administration, because I can see you've got assessment, outcome measurement, treatment. Can you say something about those, and maybe also psychoed, which can be obviously in a clinical room, but could also be an adjunct to their therapy. So maybe you want to just pick out a few things that you would say are products and services that are something that psychologists should consider.
A personal favourite of mine, and one that I think is really well suited to the work of private practice psychologists, is a product called Pro Writing Aid. So we'll all be familiar with Word and its spelling and grammar check. Pro Writing Aid is an AI-powered or assisted version of the Word spelling grammar check, but you can think of it as on steroids. And what this product basically is an extension that you can put onto each of your devices, and then it'll follow you around. So whether you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, writing a Word document, writing an email, or even texting somebody, Pro Writing Aid will be in the background looking at that text and then offering quick opportunities to literally click on a button and take up that opportunity to improve the quality of the writing. So it's an efficiency aid. And anybody who's received a text message or an email or read one of my posts over the last couple of years, Pro Writing Aid will have been in the background trying to help me write that as well as possible and as efficiently as possible. The other big one that I've already touched on is ChatGPT. I think that that's really important for psychologists to be embracing that and trying to get that as part of their workflow.
do you, as I said about the assessment, we've talked a little bit about how that may end up being done by AI or in part done by AI, but what about outcome measurement? What's your thoughts there?
Outcome measurement, I think there's been a lot of progress in terms of utilizing technology to make this as efficient as possible. So traditionally, I think part of the reluctance has been that this is just another task that I have to do. It's going to take up my time. It's going to take away from time with clients, and particularly when it was done in a paper and pen fashion. But now I would encourage people to, and certainly readers of our book will get to explore that there's a lot of technology out there that makes this stuff a lot more efficient, to be able to do it very quickly and to have automated processes for that data to be uploaded and to be able to be utilized with the client. So I think we have to kind of rethink where we're at in terms of outcome measures, that it's no longer paper and pen, that there is really good digital technology, which is making it as close to time neutral as possible.
And I think making it's quite affordable as well. So that's another part to it. But what are also your thoughts about mental health apps? Because you've got psycho ed there, and I imagine that comes into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think mental health apps going forward are going to be a really important complement to traditional services. So one of the big problems with mental health apps is there is just so many out there. So I
Yes.
think of it as like a three-step process that we need to develop a way of being able to identify good quality apps. And we go through this in the book. So there's a number of different
Wow, that'd be
frameworks.
fantastic. Mm.
I think so. There's a number of different frameworks for how to evaluate the credibility of an app that you might feel comfortable to recommend to a client. It also has to integrate with the work that you do in sessions with clients. It needs to be congruent and to fit very well. The other thing about apps is, and we know some of the stats around apps, that people will download them, use them for 5 minutes, and then move on to the next thing. If you're going to introduce an app to a client, you need to be a good advocate for that app. You need to know it intimately. And for my mind, that means that you need to have used it yourself. So I would challenge psychologists to identify apps, to use them themselves for a period of time. One great example that we come across as we were going about completing the book was an app called Sleep Cycle. A really good example of a high quality, very credible app that's relevant to a whole range of our clients. And you can download that one and do a free 7-day trial. So this is one that would be well worth psychologists doing themselves. You can learn about your own sleep as opposed to our perceptions of our sleep, and start to think about what an app like this might be like if you were to utilize it with clients. A fabulous app.
It's really a type of PD in a way, isn't it? It's basically saying through apps that are credible, you can actually update your knowledge of sleep science, for example, and then be able to bring that into your practice, into your own life, and then into your practice. And I really applaud the stepped way that you're suggesting this can be done, and I guess the care and caution that you're really, I guess, offering to psychologists that yes, there are some potential negative sides of digital technology and unintended consequences that we need to be aware of, but there are also some positives.
Definitely. And I think there's also the reality that if you ask your clients about what apps they've used, they've already used plenty of apps, including some apps that have very low credibility. So I think part of embracing it is helping our clients to find apps that do have credibility, that we want them to be using, as opposed to us not being part of that conversation, and they will just utilize whatever they find as opposed to what we recommend to them. I think it's also one of the best examples of where we might be able to share something with clients that they're using well beyond the sessions that they have with us, that it's not just what happens in the therapy room, but it can be the tools that they have that they can utilize potentially for years afterwards. And sleep's probably actually a good example of that.
Right.
If you're monitoring your sleep over a period of time, and you can get some alerts when it's going in the wrong direction, that can be incredibly helpful for clients. I know using it myself, it was really enlightening, that my perception of my own sleep and then the reality of getting the data from Sleep Cycle. And it really highlighted for me, as of course, we often ask our clients about their sleep and how their sleep is. What we're really asking is, what's your perception of your sleep? And your perception of your sleep can be way different to the reality of the data.
So it's been fantastic to talk to you, Brendan, because you can see the depth of your investigation, the way you've educated yourself, and you obviously spent those couple of years of the pandemic really diving deeply into this and considering how can we be tech savvy, how can we take on the opportunities that AI present for us, and I think you are a safe pair of hands that people can really see as a guide for them going forward. The book is called?
The Tech-Savvy Psychologist, AI and Digital Technology.
And when will it be available, do you think?
We're hoping for late February, early March.
And you'll be selling it from where?
It will have its own website.
Okay, perfect. So look out for that, everyone. Thanks so much for today, Brendan.
Thank you for having me.